All right, let's call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order on June 6th, 2018. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien?
Present.
Alderman Kelly is present. Alderman Laws?
Present.
Alderman Klee?
Present.
Alderman Karen?
Here.
Alderman Harry Guthrie?
Present.
We have all members present.
Public comment? Any members of the public wish to address the committee? Now, before we begin, I just want everyone to know the reason I have this bicycle helmet here is I rode VO bike from my neighborhood down to, there was a bike parked like a half a block away, so just wanted to let you know. All right, now, if there being no objection, the rules will be suspended to allow for 3 communications received after the agenda was prepared. Is here.
Great.
The first being a communication, or why doesn't the clerk go through the communications?
Sure. Communication from Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding the purchase of KnowBe4 Integrated Security Awareness Training and Simulated Phishing Software with a value of $9,998.
Now this, I just wanted to elaborate on this a little bit. Technically, this does not have to come to the Finance Committee because it's under 10,000. But when I saw this and I thought 9998, I said, well, that looks a little suspicious. That used to happen when I was an alderman. And so apparently there is a reason that this is that figure, but I didn't want you to think I was going around you by reducing a contract by $2. So here it is. And I think Mr. Cadignan is here to discuss this, at least inform us what it is, correct? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Bruce Cognon, for the record, Director of Information Technology. And yes, there is a reason why it's that amount is, we've been planning this for a while, and we've negotiated very aggressively with this particular vendor to get deep discounts. We only had so much in our budget. So we were able to get it to a certain amount. What this is training and testing for information security, malware, and critical things like that. My team has done an excellent job, I think, building up the firewalls, building up the infrastructure, putting in antivirus software to protect the city's assets from outside attacks. We do get quite a bit. About only 60% of our emails that come in from the outside world actually make it into the intended target. About 40% are actually malware and viruses. So we block a lot of stuff. This is the kind of thing that keeps me up at night. One of the weakest links, unfortunately, is employees. Not that employees are malicious, not that employees are trying to do something. The people that are actually the cyber actors that are trying to do this are very good at what they do. And actually just today, Dan Kukin came to me and he got an email from Jim Donchis and asking him to send him, I think it was 100 iTunes gift cards that he needed right away. Of course, what the...
Who got this?
It's going to have to go
Steve Dukin. And CFO Griffin has also got those same types of emails. If you look into them and spend the time, you can detect that they are fake, because it'll come back as the name Jim Donchis, but behind it has some other email address. But that's just a simple type of thing. We get them all the time, where people open up their own personal email and they'll click on a link that is actually spam. And since they're at work, it'll automatically try to take over their PC. We've done some things where we restrict access on certain PCs, so people can't do that. But what we really want to do is to train people to what to look for. There are some things, either misspellings or a misplaced comma, or just the email address, to really look at what the email address is. So this software will help us train the user community as well as do some testing, try and see whether or not people learned anything from it without actually causing damage. So this is something we've been working on for a while, and I think it's one of our weak links, unfortunately, and then we need to try and tighten that up. So Dan did send the 100 gift cards to the mayor, so.
I haven't gotten them yet.
That's in the budget, right? So if you have any questions, I can answer some.
Any questions? Alderman Clee.
Hi. My question is, will help with mail and the phishing and so on, but will it educate on mistakes in typing? I worked for the federal government, I can tell you. And I went to go to the FDA website, and instead of doing FDA.gov,
Right.
I did .com, and it's a completely different website, trust me.
Right.
And
Yeah, some
but
of
I
us-
knew enough to stop at that
Right.
point rather than saying, this seems odd, because it asked the question, are you over 18?
Right.
But if someone may have gone on and we don't know what would have happened at that point.
Right.
I had to report it and so on.
Yeah,
But,
some of the training, there's something like a few hundred, like 400 different modules that we can pick from.
Okay,
And some of it is how to identify the correct websites.
okay,
So in reality, if you do get a link that says it's from your bank, you shouldn't click on the link, you should go to your bank directly. But if you type in Bank of America and do the wrong, misspelling, a lot of the cyber criminals are smart enough to know they get some of these domain names that are similar but not exact.
right,
And they can actually create fake websites that almost look like it.
exactly.
So we have to train people on what to look for, how to detect these kind of things. So it helps in their personal life as well as protecting the city infrastructure.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Laws.
Does this exclusively deal with basically user error from our end? Where we're just training people to not open corrupt emails or phishing things? Or is there like another, does it protect us from, people trying to hack into our system or?
We already have those things in place.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a very, very expensive firewall that protects the city infrastructure. We also have malware programs that protect the devices. We also have a lot of antivirus software that's kept up to date. Most of the things you have to do in the infrastructure side internally, making sure that the patches are done in a timely manner that come from the vendors to patch the security leaks. We do all those things. But the things that are difficult to do is the human error aspect of it. So those are the things we're trying to tighten up. Every company, every business, every municipality has the same kind of thing. People are people, they're human, and they make mistakes. One of the things that occurs is someone will call up and say, "This is Fred from IT. We notice your PC from our monitoring is having problems. Can you give me your login and password? I want to be able to come in and fix it for you." Well, we had somebody actually within the city did that. And they went in and they took over the person's PC and, fortunately it was stopped in nick of time. But, people just automatically are trusting, and that's the nature of people. We don't want to make, people hardened and not trusting, but you want to at least educate them to ask the questions, challenge them, challenge the person and what to look for.
All right, is there a motion on this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to KnowBe4 in the amount of $9,998. Funds are available in Department 122, Information Technology, General Fund.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next communication accepted under suspension is utility appraisals. Is there a motion on that?
Yeah. Communication from Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, which was regarding the revised memo for utility appraisals with a value not to exceed $70,000. I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract with George E. Sansoni, P.E. LLC, in the amount not to exceed $70,000. Source of funding is Department 132, Assessing, General Fund, Overlay.
And I think Attorney Bolton and Mr. Duhamel are here if anybody has any questions. Do you have any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. And the third communication is from Mr. Dukran regarding Marshall Street, and there's no supporting documentation. We might have not gotten it, so maybe Mr. Dukran should come up. And is there a motion, and explain this one?
Communication from Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding Marshall Street drainage improvements with a value not to exceed $35,000.
For whatever reason, the supporting memo didn't get attached to the suspension.
Okay, so thank you, Mayor. Steve Dukran, City Engineer. I'll try to provide an explanation of what we're trying to accomplish. Marshall Street is, has an old combined sewer, and we had intentions for many years to go in and separate that because there are backups in the area, sewer backups in the area. There's a private development project that's going on. It's, I think it's called 22 East Hollis Street. It's where they're putting in some apartment buildings. And they are actually doing some drainage work in the area as well, some improvements in the street. So we are seizing this opportunity to partner with them to do some of that work to benefit the city. And so it amounts to about $35,000 is what we would spend. So this firm, the firm that's doing the work in the street, will perform the work for us at that cost.
And this will improve the drainage flow of the sewage in the Crown Hill area?
Well, just not general area, the Marshall Street, Bauer Street area.
Okay. Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So are we realizing some cost savings by putting this together with the project that's currently going on?
That is true. We won't pay costs like mobilization of equipment, and it's very similar work, so the pricing is good. So we are realizing some savings.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Karen.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm understanding that this work is from East Hollis to Bauer Street only. That area, that's part of Marshall Street, that whole area?
Yes, that's the piece that's remaining to be separated. Over the years gone by, we have completed separation from Bowers all the way to Harbor Avenue, a very long section, and we don't have any problems there anymore.
Right.
But this remaining section was left to be done.
Okay, so that was the last piece.
That's
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Is there a motion on this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to Thibault Corporation in the amount not to exceed $35,000. Funds are available in Department 169 Wastewater CSO Flooding.
Discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Dukran. Now we'll return to the regular agenda. Alderwoman Kelly.
Communication from Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding revised memo for utility appraisals. That's what I was wondering if I went back. I apologize, I went backwards. Communication from Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding purchase of personal protective clothing equipment with a value of $14,949. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and authorize the purchase from Globe Manufacturing in the amount of $19,949. Funds are available in Department 152 Fire General Operating Fund.
And I think if you have questions, Assistant Chief Walker from the Fire Department is here. Are there any questions or discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed? And the motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
Communication from Dan Kuchen, Purchasing Manager, regarding the purchase of Mitsubishi air conditioning units with a value of $26,448. I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to AAA Energy Services in the amount of $26,448. The source of funding is Department 157, Citywide Communications, Escrows, and Bond Funds.
And if you have questions, Mr. Mansfield is here. Are there questions or comments? Alderwoman Kelly, or excuse me, Alderwoman Clee.
Take my question. When I'm looking at this, I see that there was one bid that was a little lower. Why do we not go with that?
So we did go out to bid. There were several bids. One of them was, the lowest bid was Home Depot. They left a few things out of the initial contract. I went back to them. They came back with another price. Then I did an apples-to-apples comparison of what they were giving us for air conditioning units. The air conditioning units they were proposing were residential units, and all the other ones were commercial units. These, just so you know, these air conditioners actually do run around the clock, 365 days a year, so they're not a residential where it only runs in the summertime. So the units are used to cool all of the servers for the radio system.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Discussion, questions? Alderman Laws.
You'll have to forgive me, I mean, there was 440 pages to sort through for the finance agenda today, but I couldn't find, like, warranty information on the, did you do a comparison between the warranties from the Home Depot and from the other contract?
Yes, I'll have to dig in my pile as well, so.
Can I put that-
I believe that the AAA proposal had the better warranty. They offered, I believe it was 5 years compared to the Home Depot, which is a 1 year.
Sounds good to me.
Just look at it, try to confirm that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And I don't see it here. I don't see it right off the top of my head. So I apologize for that.
It's different than what you're saying. Do you mind just letting us know some point in the future? Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Anything else? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
Communication from Dan Kuchen, Purchasing Manager, regarding the purchase of Nashua Manchester Redundant Communication Center. The value is $505,899. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and authorize the purchase from Motorola Solutions in the amount of $505,899. Funds are available in Department 157, Citywide Communications, Nashua Manchester Communications Resiliency Grant.
And these are grant funds, correct?
Correct.
So there's no city money involved here.
No, none whatsoever.
Any questions or comments? Yes, Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question to Mr. Mansfield. Manchester is equally seeking grants too on some of this when, they can. If we don't get it, Manchester will fill in and try to get a grant as well.
This particular project, there's an even grant that we're both contributing to, $300,000 from Manchester and $300,000 from Nashua
Okay,
through the
okay.
grant process.
Beautiful.
Anything else? All those in favor of the question, or all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Mr. Mansfield.
Thank you.
The next item is, do you need, to Mr. Duhamel, do you need this one as well as the first one? Or did the first one, what? But you don't need the 50,000, right? Yeah, why don't you come on up?
Communication from Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding Flatley appraisals with the value not to exceed $16,000.
So on the original agenda was a $50,000 figure for
appraisal assignments going on
utilities.
at this
Wait,
time,
just let
yes.
me ask the question.
No,
right?
I'm sorry.
For utilities, that was no longer necessary because we approved the 70, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so was there a motion on the Flatley appraisal?
Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to Property Valuation Advisors in the amount not to exceed $16,000. Funds are available in Department 132, Assessing General Fund Overlay.
Discussion, questions for Mr. Duhamel? All right, Alderwoman Kelly.
I'd love just a little bit of background. I also was digging through those 400 pages.
We have two appraisal assignments going on right now. The first one was for utility properties for the 70,000. This one is for some commercial properties owned by John Flatley that are under appeal with the city or at the state level. So we're just hiring an independent appraiser to go out and appraise those properties for defense purposes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Further discussion, any questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alderwoman Kelly.
We have a communication from Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding unleaded fuel contract with a value estimated of $421,433. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to Dennis K. Burke, Inc. in an estimated amount of $421,434. The source of funding is Department 186 Transportation, various departments' general funds.
And Mr. LaFleur, I think, is here on that one? Or,
Actually, I'll handle it.
okay, this is Mr. Kukin. Are there any questions, comments on this? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
We have a communication from Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding 2018 sewer replacement Kinsley Street with a value of $1,139,300. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and contingent upon Board of Aldermen approval, award the contract to Newport Construction Corporation in the amount of $1,139,300. Funds are available in Department 169 wastewater.
Discussion? Questions? Mr. Dukran is here if you have questions for him. Alderman Laws.
I'm just wondering generally, when this Kinsley Street project should be. It's one of the streets that I get questions about most often.
Correct. Steve Dugan, city engineer. Yes, Kingston Street is in our paving program, scheduled to be paved this year. However, there's all this work to be done. As you might have seen, there is natural gas work. Liberty Utilities is out there, and they've done quite a bit of work. They still have a lot left. And the next step is for us to get the sewer work done. And our hope is to get it all done prior to getting the street paved this year. If this runs over, then it'll have to be next year, but we are shooting for completing the paving this year.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions, discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
Communication from Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding 2018 asphalt testing. The value is $43,875. Okay. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to SW Coal Engineering, Inc. in the amount of $43,875. Source of funding is Department 161 Street, General and Trust Funds. That was rough.
Since I think there's quite a bit of interest in our paving program, maybe, Mr. Dukran, you could give a explanation of what this testing is?
Yes. We have started, within the last couple of years, testing for quality control, making sure that the contractor is delivering asphalt and installing the asphalt per the contract specification, making sure they meet our standards for compaction, for the amount of liquid asphalt is in there, so that we have the pavement will last the life we expect of it. And we have stepped up the program this year simply because we have a lot more than we have been doing in previous years. And we are going to be doing some limited amount of testing at the plant itself. And the idea behind that, even though we get the mix itself, the contents of the mix are delivered to us, we want to make sure that the plant's not arbitrarily giving us something that we don't expect. So some additional testing is being done at the plant. So it's all about quality control to make sure we get the right product.
Alderwoman Clee.
Thank you for taking my question. When you say testing, are you just testing the material itself? Do you test it once it's down on the ground or just prior to it being put in?
Okay, so at the plant, you're visiting the plant and you're making sure that the person operating the batching equipment is doing the right thing, putting the right mixtures. In the field, when it's being laid, we test while it's being laid certain elements, and when it's done, we come back and we take little cores, sample cores, and it's sent to the lab, and they do gradation testing, they do a compaction test, and then they check for if there's any further questions, we check for the amount of liquid that was in the sample.
Alderwoman Clee.
I appreciate you doing that. I was getting a lot of complaints that some of the roads that we had put down came up a little too soon, so thank you very much for that.
Yes, and just as, so that the question is out there, and I know Alderman Karen is pretty well aware of this, the part of Main Street from All Street south towards East Dunstable Road, that has failed the test, and we are working with a contractor to replace that pavement. So you'll see that happening. So in the event of questions out there, that's what we're doing.
Anyone else? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
Communication from Dan Kuchen, Purchasing Manager, regarding pavement management services for 2018 paving program with a value of $328,675. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to Hayner Swanson, Inc. in the amount of $328,675. Funds are available in Department 160 Administration Engineering Paving Bond.
You want to, Mr. Dukran, give us an explanation on this, please?
Yes, I'll give a brief explanation. So, as I said earlier, our program has become very extensive starting this year, and the program comprises of a contract that you must have seen, a $6.7 million contract towards for Newport construction. They happen to be a Nashville firm, if you didn't know that. This is the first time they're doing this amount of work for us. We also have leftover work from last year to the tune of $1.1 million from a Brock's contract. Both of these contracts have already started. We're doing some neighborhood streets. And then we have coming up $4.4 million of federal highway dollars left over from the Broad Street Parkway that we want to use to pave several arterials, Emma Street, Broad Street, Somerset Parkway. And if there's still money, that some of that will go towards Kinsley Street. So the program is very large, much larger than we've ever done before, and we need the services of consultant. Hina Swanson, another local firm, has been helping us with this program, and this is another contract we want so that they can help us with the management of the program in terms of making decisions, engineering decisions, as well as providing personnel that we don't have on our staff to do the construction observation. So that's essentially what this contract is about. It's very extensive, and beyond that, we do other programs related, like crack sealing, as well as microsurfacing, which is a thin application to give you 5 to 7 years. If the street is not too far gone on it, we can get another few years out of the pavement, as well as managing the how we go out and evaluate the streets. Every year, we have a firm that goes out and the firm looks at a portion of the streets and come back with the information regarding the quality of the pavement and how we should program funding in the future. So streets aren't picked in any arbitrary fashion. It's pretty sophisticated, the way the streets are selected. And so Hannah Swanson, under this contract, will help us with managing and selecting those streets.
Discussion, questions? Alderwoman Karen.
Yeah, it's just a comment. I think this is a great resource of funding to help engineering because there's so much going on. And if we have all these problems with our streets, Hannah Swanson is a good firm to be dealing with that for the engineering department. So I totally agree with this contract.
Thank you. Anyone else? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now, the next item, we've already approved. I don't know, it was both in our suspension pile and on the agenda, but this is the 35,000 for for Marshall Street, which we already did. So we'll go on to the next communication. Alderwoman Kelly.
Communication from Dan Kuchen, Purchasing Manager, regarding central irrigation purchase with a value of $26,220. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to Smart Water Management LLC and the amount of $26,220. Source of funding is Department 177, Parks and Rec, General Fund.
I believe Mr. Caggiano is here on this. If you have questions, I don't know. Are there any questions or discussions? Questions or discussion? If you don't know this, there's Mr. Nick Caggiano, Head of Parks and Rec. I don't know if you've met before.
Nick Caggiano, Park and Rec Superintendent.
Any discussion, questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes. Thank you. Thank you. Now I think we have several landfill items, so maybe Mr. LaFleur should come up. Alderwoman Kelly.
We have a communication from Dan Kuchen, Purchasing Manager, regarding single-stream recycling with a value not to exceed $400,000. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to Casella Recycling LLC in an amount not to exceed $400,000. Funds are available in Department 168, Solid Waste.
Now, we have discussed this before, but since this is an item that we really didn't have to deal with until recently, maybe, Mr. LaFleur, you could please give us a brief explanation of this new expenditure?
Superintendent Jeff LaFleur, Solid Waste Department. Our solid waste recycling markets have dropped. China has completely dropped out of the market. You've probably all seen it in the papers and everything. So recycling is starting to cost us more money than we ever thought would happen. As of last year, we were actually making money. It was a revenue-making endeavor for the city. With China dropping out and markets going bananas right now, we have a cost associated with us to ship out our recycling. Last month's recycling costs were at $63.60 a ton. We ship out 5,000 tons a year. I secured this vendor right now. They're our current vendor. They decided to stay along with us. We went out to bid. They gave me a ceiling price of no more than $150 a ton, which is amazing. It's outrageous. It's a lot of money for recycling. Recycling is the right thing to do. I believe it's the right thing to do. It saves us airspace in the landfill. We budgeted for $400,000 this year. I'm hoping that's going to cover it. If it doesn't cover it, then I have to come back to you guys and we have to make a decision, because at that point, where do we bend and where do we break? There's communities all over the United States right now that are stopping recycling. I don't think we're at that point yet. I don't believe we should be at that point yet. But again, if we expend the $400,000, then we have some tough decisions to make.
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am disappointed with the world events that caused us into this, and I do believe in recycling as well. But I would like if you could just share to us, because by doing and continuing with this program that you suggested, we're going to hopefully approve here, we are getting a little bit of a benefit, even though it's cost us some money. We're elongating our term with the landfill. And if we put the recyclables in the current landfill and to save the dollar there, we just shorten the life, and then we're in a little bit more difficult of a financial situation.
Absolutely. We did a rough calculation, and over 15 years of airspace, we'd lose 1 year of airspace putting the recycling in there. So it'd be we're losing a month a year, pretty much, by putting the 5,000 tons in there. And that's if we can get the right compaction and everything, depending on the materials that come in. If it's all cardboard, of course, you don't get as much compaction. But your assessment's correct.
Now, if we get phase four permitted, which I know we're working on, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. But
Yes, sir.
if we get the phase 4 permitted, what do you project the life of the landfill would be at that point?
If phase 4, we just had a meeting with our consultant, Sanborn Head, and they came up with some really great ideas, and they're actually giving a consideration to going over the top of the old closed MSW landfill. So we could have 30 more, 40, depending on where we get approved, we could have 30 to 40, maybe even 50 more years of life with phase 4. But that's a big area to cover. So that's what we're looking at. It depending on DES, if they're going to give us the approvals and everything, we're fighting hard for everything we can get.
Alderman Laws.
Well, I just forgot my question. Oh, yeah, there we go. Is there like is it possible that, so we're recycling glass, cardboard, plastic, correct? Or glass, paper, plastic. Is it possible that we eliminate one of those and put it in the landfill and ask our citizens to only recycle the other two? And that way we save more money on weight?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things we're talking about. My director photo, she's having some meetings right now. She's going to talk it over with the mayor, and we're just trying to figure out when the right time is to pull the trigger on that. I mean, if the market's ever turned around where we may make money again, which isn't in the foreseeable future, we may want the glass in there for the weight. The markets are kind of funky that way. Right now, we don't want the glass in there, and again, that'll be a meeting that we'll have a discussion with the mayor, and then we'll start working on communications out to the public to eliminate that from ours.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. My question was actually his, but then you talked to it. So I wanted to know if that is the first step that you're thinking from a contingency standpoint, is removing the glass, or do you have other?
That's our heaviest part of the recycling right now is the glass, and as was stated in some of the articles and communications through the news, that the glass is actually getting landfilled right now. So it would be the best thing for us to do right away.
So that'd be step one. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
We have a communication from Dan Kuchen, Purchasing Manager, regarding electronic recycling with a value not to exceed $75,000. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and contingent upon Board of Aldermen approval, award the contract to Universal Recycling Technologies LLC at an annual cost not to exceed $75,000. Source of funding is Department 168 Solid Waste.
Mr. LaFleur, you want to explain this one a little bit?
Sure. This contract will be with our current vendor, URT. They came back with a bid that was very favorable. In fact, if we did some calculations on the numbers of materials that came in last year, computers, flat screen TVs, and other components, other electrical components, and if everything were to stay the same, we'd actually make out just a little bit better than we did last year as far as spending. If we separate out our computer towers and put those all in one box, which my guys at the landfill do, we get credit towards other electronics. And we've actually seen some of our electronics finally on the downward curve, because when electronics recycling first started, it was a lot of those cathode ray tube TVs, the big ones, the big consoles. We saw an influx of those come in. Now it's the flat screen TVs where they're not as expendable. They're actually lasting a lot longer than we thought they would. So we're actually seeing a downward trend. If everyone's TVs are about ready to go, we could see an uptick in that. But again, we're right now the vendor that we secured gave us the best price, and I think that's the way to go.
Alderwoman Clee.
Thank you for taking my question. I know this kind of sounds a little silly, but I just recently took a tour of Make It Labs. And one of the things that they had said was they take in different types of things like electronics and so on. If people want to donate it to them, would you, I don't know if any of the stuff that you get is worth them looking at it to kind of see if it's anything they can use. They use different pieces and bits so that when other people are there and putting things together, I didn't know, in other words, it could have another useful life.
I would encourage all the, excuse me, I would encourage the residents to bring it to them. The logistics of it, for us, the recycling vendor that's actually coming and taking it would probably want anything that's usable.
Okay.
So they can make profit on their end. But if residents would like to bring their stuff to them, they're more than welcome to.
Thank you.
The Board of Public Works is looking at the issue of charging residents for these electronic items at some price per piece. Right now, it's virtually free. It is free for the first two, right?
First two.
Most towns charge $10, $15, $20 per item. And we are spending $75,000 here. We get a lot of pressure on the landfill. So they may, I think in the end, there will be a vote to charge some amount. I'm not sure what that will be. Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
When do you expect that to happen? I have several that I need to get rid of.
Well, go to Make It Labs. Take it to Make It Labs. Take it to Make It Labs. But I would get down there this weekend because you just don't know.
It's huge. I have two huge cathode ray tubes. One's been sitting in the van, and the other one's been sitting in my family room.
You better get down
I
there.
know.
Maybe I'll call up the other commissioners and say, hey, we got this customer who's
right
going to
away.
bring in these huge items. Let's get this thing passed. All right. Any other discussion? Alderman Laws.
I think it's worth just saying on the record, before you bring your used electronics to Make It Labs, you should call them and ask if they want it. So just so people aren't like bringing, tons of computers there, dropping them off on their doorstep.
Oh, never drop.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
Communication from Dan Kuchen, Purchasing Manager, regarding scrap metal recycling with a revenue of an estimated $55,000. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and contingent upon Board of Aldermen approval, award the contract to Excel Recycling LLC for an estimated generated annual revenue of $55,000. Source of funding is Department 168 Solid Waste.
Discussion? Questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
Communication from Dan Kuchen, Purchasing Manager, regarding refrigerant recovery CRC's services with a value not to exceed $20,000. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and contingent upon Board of Aldermen approval, award the contract to Interstate Refrigerant Recovery, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $20,000. Funds are available in Department 168 Solid Waste.
Discussion? Questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. And I think that's all we have for Mr. LaFleur. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Communication from Dan Kuchen, Purchasing Manager, regarding a portable Goodwin brand pump with a value of $45,279. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and approve the purchase from Exlum in the amount of $45,279. Source of funding is Department 169 Wastewater Wharf.
Discussion? Questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Unfinished business, none. New business, none. Record of expenditures, is there a motion on the record of expenditures?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I move that the Finance Committee has complied with the city charter and ordinances pertaining to the record of expenditures for the period from May 11th, 2018 to May 31st, 2018.
That's a motion?
Yes.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes. General discussion? Are there any items of general discussion? Public comment? There are no members of the public here. Remarks by aldermen? Nothing there. Alderman O'Brien?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the Finance Committee is adjourned at approximately 7:46 PM.